Ladies and gentlemen, all participants to this webinar, welcome the Diabetes International Federation, North Africa and MENA region. Welcome you to this webinar about diabetes and safe Hajj, which is virtual. The webinar is organized by the Knowledge Exchange Committee of the organization. I have the pleasure to make the start and the kickoff point to introduce Professor Akhtar Hussain, the president of the International Diabetes Federation, who is known to you, and he is known most and close to the IDF International Diabetes International Federation, the MENA region. Actually, Professor Akhtar Hussain is by profession, who was a professor in Oslo University and North University in Norway. He's by profession, he's a professor of global health, which is very close to the issue of today. You are very welcome, Professor Akhtar Hussain.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I'm Dr. Akhtar Hussain. I'm the president of International Diabetes Federation. It's a great opportunity for me to be present in the opening of a very important webinar. First of all, I would like to thank the organizing committee and Dr. Mohammed Sandeep for inviting me on this very important occasion. As we all know that Hajj is one of the 5 pillars of Islam and is obligatory for all adult Muslims who can afford the journey and are in good health. However, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already pronounced that life that only Allah can give to us is very precious, and it is our responsibility to take care of life. The Hajj can be quite demanding in terms of physical activities and mental effort. People performing it may be preoccupied by the religious rituals and forgetting often the self-management for their own health conditions. During Hajj, the person's life routine changes as they travel through places where the geography, weather, diet, and habits are different from what they are used to. Therefore, medical conditions such as diabetes, which depends on the stable routine, can be seriously affected. We know that among those people who suffer during the Hajj, about 50% of these people are suffering from complications arising from diabetes. Among the complications, diabetic ketoacidosis or hyperglycemia, hypersomnolar state are referred to be the most common one. But as we know that respiratory infections are known precipitating factor for hyperglycemic crisis that has been reported. It is important for those who wants to perform the Hajj is make sure that they have the safety of medications, insulin, pens, syringes, needles enough with them. Cool water wallet to carry insulin identifying wristbands, letter from a diabetes clinic, detailing medical problems, diabetic emergency kit, hand luggage, carrying carbohydrates, and protective shoes, which is also quite important. You will be hearing a lot of particular professional speeches which will follow to give you specific recommendations that will also be needed. But it may also prove to be an excellent opportunity for reviewing management and enhancing diabetes education. So patients that who are traveling with the diabetic conditions are properly educated and knows how to manage their diabetic conditions while they're performing the Hajj rituals. I'm happy to inform you that International Diabetes Federation is now preparing a new guide on fasting and diabetes, because many of the people during the Hajj also perform fasting. So if you have a fasting conditions, you need to consult your doctors before you travel and you plan to do fasting during Hajj, because this will exhaust your health conditions even more than before. Thank you, and I wish you all the success for this very important webinar.
And now I have the pleasure to introduce Professor Muhammad Sandid, the president of the MENA region, who is going to talk about the epidemiology of diabetes. Dr. Sandid is as the president of the Lebanese Diabetes Association, and he's the founder of the Lebanese National Diabetes Program, and he's a decision maker of the advisory board of the National Diabetes Community. He's an ex-member of the executive board of Endocrine Society. He's assistant professor of medicine at Lebanese University, member of the American Diabetes Association, Middle East in Insulin and Neuropathy Working Group. He's a board member of the DAS Diabetes in Asia Study Group, and he's a member of Consultation Committee, Faculty of Health Science, Beirut. And he's an honorary WHO Beirut office to contribute of the Lebanese health program. I know, Dr. Muhammad, that you have, I've noticed that you have a common cold, so there might be some difficulty of the voice, but I wish you good health soon. Please, Dr. Muhammad Sandid.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for this introduction. Thank you so much, Professor Akhtar, for your participation. And thank you for all organizers, speakers, and attendees. I hope that this webinar will provide benefit to doctors, medical staff, and diabetics who wish to go to Hajj. In this short time, I will present shocking figures about diabetes rates in our region and the high prevalence percentage of diabetics among the Hajjaj, leaving the fellow lectures and the opportunity to talk about the required instruction before, during, and after Hajj. As you know, the International Diabetes Federation, over 250 national diabetes associations and 165 countries and territories, IDF formed into 7 regions, MENA included the region. Now 22 countries joined the membership of the MENA International Diabetes Federation. IDF MENA consists of 29 diabetes associations representing 22 countries. So 1.6 billion or 23% of the world's population are Muslim, and this number is growing at a rate of 3% per year. Approximately 350 million Muslims live in MENA region, 20% the global Muslim population. Also, 90 million Muslims are living with diabetes, and 22.5 million Hajj every year, Hajj to Mecca. So the number of people with diabetes worldwide is predicted to increase by 46% till 537 million in 2021 to 783 million by 2045. So the number of people with diabetes in MENA is predicted to increase by 86% till 73 million in 2021 to 136 million by 2045, the second highest increase of all IDF regions. So, and even worse than it appears, we have now in the world in 2021, 541 million people at risk of diabetes, people with IGT between 20 and 79 years. This number is 48 million in MENA in 2021. In 2045, this number will reach 80 million. So now we have in total in MENA region 121 million people with diabetes and IGT in 2021 and 215 million in 2045. So diabetes is a major health issue that has reached alarming levels. Today, more than 500,000 people are living with diabetes worldwide, more than 73 million in MENA, more than 13 million in Gulf, and 4.3 million in Saudi Arabia. So some highlight about the Atlas. 1 in 10 adults between 20 and 79 years has diabetes, 507 million people. In MENA, 1 in 6 adults, and 73 million people. 1 in 2 adults and diagnosed in world. We have 30 million people in MENA, 1 in 3 adults, 1 in 9 adults impaired glucose tolerance in the world. In MENA, we have 59 million people IGT. Also, 1 in 18 adults impaired fasting glucose in the world, 319. In MENA, we have 29 million people impaired fasting glucose, 1 in 6 live births, 21 million in the world, 80% have mother with GDM. In MENA, 1 in 7 live births affected by hyperglycemia in pregnancy. 1.2 million children and adolescents below 20 years have type 1 diabetes in the world. In the MENA, we have 193,000 children and adolescents with type 1. We have 25,000 newly diagnosed each year. 3 in 4 people with diabetes live in low and middle income countries in the world. In the MENA, 80% live in low and middle income. 9% of global health expenditure spent on diabetes in the world. MENA, we have $31 billion in 2021 expenditure spent on diabetes, 6.7 million deaths in the world. In MENA, we have 800,000 deaths in 2025. So now, regardless the high estimate of diabetes prevalence in the MENA region, only 3.3% of the total global expenditure on diabetes is spent on diabetic living in MENA. So $25 billion was spent in MENA. Around 70% of this amount is spent our patient pockets. So this is the increasing global impact of diabetes in the world. In 2000, 151 million. Now we have 537, 3 times more in 20 years, also the same percentage in the MENA region. The prevalence of diabetes rises among the age group between 55 and 75 years, and this almost coincides with the age group most in Hajj, which means that the percentage of people with diabetes are more among the Hajjaj, and this is what calls us to conduct more studies and intensify efforts to raise awareness in our region on this subject. This is 5 countries on the region rank among the most top 5. We have Pakistan, Egypt, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Sudan, and burden of diabetic food, Saudi Arabia 12%, Egypt 4.2%, and Iraq 2.7%. The MENA region is known for its high prevalence of metabolic syndrome, ranking from 70% to 50%. So in 2019, diabetes-related health within the MENA region totaled $25 billion, and this is expected to increase by 31% to $33 billion by 2030. Qatar is the highest, and Pakistan the lowest. This is also the prevalence of diabetes in the MENA region, the lowest in Yemen, 4.5, the highest in Sudan, 22.5. What is the real size of the population in our region? We have some diabetes challenge in the MENA region today. Some are due to the nature of the disease, chronic and epidemic disease, burden of diabetes, main cause of death before the age of 60, very costly disease, no efficient method to cure or prevent completely diabetes. Other are particular on our region, high prevalence, high rate of diagnosis, diabetes complication, more common and high mortality rate, economic difficulty or disaster situation. So we need to increase lifestyle changes and modify our sedentarity lifestyle lead to the outcome, the obesity, and sorry. Also, we need to work on prevalence of physical inactivity in our board. Sorry. So 4 out of 5 people with diabetes in MENA live in low and middle income diabetes. This is where the diabetes epidemic it's first in the hearts. Okay, we need to change the lifestyle. Now, while the world celebrates the centenary of insulin discovery, in some countries in our MENA region, children are still dying because of the difficulty of access to insulin. So at least 7 countries in our region suffer from access to insulin: Sudan, Jordan, Palestine, Lebanon, Syria, Iran, Afghanistan. So we need to work on the barriers to ensure access to diabetes care, an effective system to ensure uninterrupted supply of insulin, and almost no national survey policy, and 35,000 young people with type 1 diabetes die in MENA region. No uniformity of the MENA countries. The MENA contains countries with the highest and the lowest income countries, and some countries in between. So the big challenge, so to help diabetic, all MENA countries must develop a disaster preparedness plan and national diabetes care guidelines during the humanitarian crisis to mitigate the effect of this disaster on their population. Also, almost 1 in 2 adults with diabetes are unaware they have diabetes. We need to work in education. IDF mission is to promote diabetes care, awareness, prevention, and cure. We have many projects in IDF, advocacy, Young World Diabetes Day, school, etc. In conclusion, we are facing now many challenges in our region: the prevalence increase of diabetes, high rate of complication, unhealthy lifestyle modification, expenditure of diabetes treatment are very low in some countries, the lack of education, disaster in many countries with millions of diabetic refugees with urgent needs. We need to act now to avoid a more catastrophic situation. Insulin bank need to work together, education, school, crisis and disaster prevention, and promoting food care. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the organizer. Many thanks to IDF MENA region and for the conference committee. Now I will present the second speaker, Dr. Khalid Tayyib from Saudi Arabia. He is consultant diabetologist, chairman of the administrative board of Shifa Charity Society. He is a member of the administrative board of Saudi Scientific Diabetes Association and the founder of the Diabetes Center project. The title of his talk would be about diabetes and Hajj. What do we know? Dr. Khalid.
Assalamu alaikum.
Dr. Khalid.
Yes. Hello.
Yes, Dr.
Dear colleagues, I'd like to thank the organizing committee, Dr. Muhammad Sandid, and all the colleagues for this actually important subject that we are discussing tonight. I would like also to thank my colleague for the nice introduction. Actually, the topic diabetes and Hajj is important and vital to millions and millions of Muslims every year. I will try to, in the next maybe 15 to 20 minutes, just to give you an outline of the problem of Hajj and how maybe we can solve this. So Hajj is actually a journey. It's a journey, it's a religious journey to perform one of the 5 pillars of Islam. It is a call by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to Ibrahim, peace upon him, to call all Muslims to come to Mecca, at least once in their lifetime. Now this is one of the pillars of Islam, and this is also to maintain the life of Mecca through all the generations. So this must be done, as I said, once in lifetime, but only for those who can afford it. I mean, afford it. It means physically, yeah. I mean, they have to have a good health, and financially they can support themselves to pay the expenses that is expected during their journey. So if anybody cannot afford it, then he is free not to do it. Now the journey maybe lasts for 1 to 5 days minimum, but we used to for Hajjis to stay months in Mecca. They come early and they can leave. But this is the journey. If you can see it on the screen, they start by coming to Mecca, and from Mecca they have to go to the mosque to perform tawaf. Then from there they go to Mina, then they go to Arafat, and then they come back to Muzdalifah and Mina, and then they end by going back to the Haram. It's a journey that everybody has to do, and involves, of course, a lot of efforts. The prevalence of diabetes and people coming for Hajj is high, because most of the Hajjis actually come from the Middle East and North Africa. And this is an area where diabetes, as you know, is very high in prevalence. So we are expecting most of the Hajjis to come. And I have seen, if you go to the prevalence of diabetes in the MENA region and the North Africa region, in the ages above 50 years of age, you will find that up to 30 to 35% of people in this age group from these countries, the Middle East and the North Africa region, they suffer from diabetes. Now, Hajj, of course, sometimes comes in winter, which is good time to perform Hajj, but sometimes comes in summer, like this year. It's in the end of June. And I can tell you the temperature here in Mecca today, for instance, it is 47 degrees centigrade. And this is in the shade. If you are in the sun direct, it can go up to more than 50 degrees centigrade. This is very hot. It's very hot. And of course, this adds a very high risk, especially to the people with diabetes, to develop heat stroke and heat exhaustion. Although Hajj has been there for thousands of years, we don't have enough literature on Hajj. One of the reasons maybe is that it's difficult to do research during Hajj, because Hajjis keep moving. They are not staying in one place so that you can study. So they keep moving. So actually you study a place more than you study different Hajjis. This is only a diagram to show you that most of the Hajjis come from areas where diabetes is prevalent. And usually the government of Saudi Arabia allows 1,000 Hajji per 1 million inhabitant of the population of any country. So if you get a country with 100 million, then they allow them for 100,000, something like this. So diabetes is prevalent in Hajjis, especially that all Hajjis are in the age group above 50 years. Now, what are the risks for diabetics during Hajj? This is a paper from Al-Jifari. Education or poor education. We can show you an example of that. Improper use of medications. So people either don't bring their medication, or the medication is discontinued, or changing the dehydration, heat stroke, especially in summer. Food injuries is very common in Hajj. It's really very common. Limited access to healthy food choices. Food is there, but to find a healthy food maybe is difficult. And maybe this is why in Shifa Charity Society this year we have launched a program to provide healthy food choices for Hajjis. We'll start this year, inshallah. Now, hypo and hyperglycemic episodes is another hazard. Infrequent blood glucose monitoring, so patients don't know how is the status of the blood glucose, and hospitalization due acute diabetic or even non-diabetic emergencies can occur. Now, heat stroke is a real risk, and it is the threat number one, actually, for people with diabetes during summer season. So like this year, heat stroke is the main danger for these people. So as I said, during summer, the local temperature in Mecca al-Mukarramah may be as high as 45 to 50 degrees centigrade in the shade, not under the sun. The diabetics, especially those coming from European countries like Turkey, for instance, they carry a higher risk. So maybe people from Pakistan or India or so, they maybe can tolerate better, but still we see a lot of patients with heat stroke and heat exhaustion in summer season. Now you can reduce this by using a very small tool, that is an umbrella, and consuming a lot of water. And this definitely has changed the picture of heat stroke and heat exhaustion in the last 40 years that I have been working in Hajj for more than 40 years. I have worked in Mecca, I have worked in Arafat, I have worked in Mina, and I've seen the progress, alhamdulillah, that has been made in the medical care for people with Hajj. Now, the Saudi Ministry of Health, actually, if you go to the website of the Ministry of Health, you will find educational information for the pilgrims in all languages. It's there in Arabic, in French, in English, in Urdu, in Turkey, in Indonesian language, all languages. You will find a very good information, not only regarding heat stroke, but in diabetics, for people with renal failure, for people who have hypertension, how to care for the feet, how to, go for, avoid heat stroke, and so on. You find maybe a 44-page booklet of information in all different languages. So it's there. And of course, free medical services are available for pilgrims everywhere during Hajj, and it's free. So it's even from the airport up to the coming back to the airport. So in Mecca, in Medina, if they go to Medina, in Mina, in Arafat, or in Muzdalifah, everywhere medical services are there, and they are free to people who come for Hajj. This is a picture for myself. Maybe, I don't know, 25, 30 years back, I don't know. But this is in Arafat, and you can see here that even we used airplanes to evacuate patients with, this is a patient who had an MI, acute MI during the day of Arafah, and we got an evacuation by airplane for him. And this was maybe 25 years back, I believe. And you can see how even the government and the custodian of the Tuhil Mosque himself and the former Minister of Health, how they go and they make sure and visit the health services there and make sure that everything is in good hands. Now, heat stroke, now epidemiological data, this is a paper from Jeffrey. He stated that epidemiological data has shown that type 2 diabetic individuals are more likely to die or hospitalized during a period of severe heat compared with those with non-diabetics. This is mainly because of diabetes and its comorbidities, especially peripheral vascular disease or coronary artery disease and so on. And of course, the people with diabetes and suffer from reduced sweating and lower skin blood flow, and this, of course, increases the body temperature. And there are studies that have shown impairment in local heat response of sweating and skin blood flow in patients with type 2 diabetes. Now, going to the next, maybe more prevalent problem of people in Hajj, and that is the foot injuries, the diabetic foot injuries, especially those people who has got loops or loss, what we call loss of protective sensation. You get diabetic neuropathies. They walk barefoot, unfortunately, and they get ulcers, and they don't feel the ulcers and they got deep wounds because of that. And in 2003 and 4, a study evaluating the surgical admissions for patients with Hajjis, diabetic foot was found to be the most common cause for admission to a surgical ward. This is a very common problem, and especially, of course, as I said, is in people with diabetes. Now, this is you can see people Hajji will go to the Haram to do tawaf. Of course, they are barefooted, but I can assure you this is a special type of marble. So even in summer, the marble is not hot. It's normal temperature, maybe sometimes cool if you are in the afternoon or at night. So this is a special marble. Yet, of course, people have to, part of the journey, the people have to walk barefoot, especially in Haram. Now, looking at self-monitoring of blood glucose during Hajj, and this is a study by Saber. You can see here that almost 2/3 of people going to Hajj, they do not do self-monitoring, and the same, they do not have glucometers. So this is one of the common problems that we have to solve and educate our patients who go to Hajj to have the glucometers and do self-monitoring. The same goes for insulin storage. So bad insulin storage or poor insulin storage is very common. Now, the risk stratification for people with diabetes willing to perform Hajj, as stated by Mahmoud Ibrahim and his colleagues, they have divided people into 4 categories. Those who have a low risk, and these are the people who with a good condition, and they have controlled blood glucose and A1C less than 7 or 7%, and these people can perform Hajj if they wish to. Now, people with moderate risk are people with diabetes treated with shorter acting secretagogues or basal insulin, and A1C less than 8.5, and they don't have severe comorbidities or cardiovascular comorbidities. This includes also people treated with SGLT2s, and I would not recommend these agents, especially in summer, because of the risk of dehydration. So high risk are the categories of people with uncontrolled type 1 diabetes, adult, of course, not children. Type 2 diabetics on basal insulin regimen or insulin pump therapy, that can be a high risk. Severe hypoglycemic episode during the last 3 months, has uncontrolled hypertension and coronary heart disease, sustained poor glycemic control, pregnancy, and patients with history of DKA or hyperosmolar coma. And they said that Hajj is not recommended or postponed for these people. But actually, what happens in real life is that the Hajjis, they wait for the chance. And when they get the chance, you cannot ask them not to go. They will go. Of course, there are some screening for their health before they come to Hajj. But still, we see a lot of patients in Hajj who have all of these comorbidities that is stated, and they come for Hajj. And actually, some of them even wish that they can even die during Hajj. And we have heard this from a lot of Hajjis who come to our country. Now, a very high risk category is a history of recurrent hypoglycemic episode, hypoglycemic unawareness, patients with chronic renal disease, stage 3 to 5, advanced macrovascular disease, history of myocardial infarction, unstable angina, old age, heart failure, and so on. And active or major food problems, actually. And I put food problems as one of the really very high risk. If a patient has got loss of protective sensation, then I think they should be very much careful, and even they can take a sort of a clean footwear if they go to Haram, and they can use it actually, rather than getting a foot injury. Looking at some of the studies, to look at the diabetic emergencies, in one of the study looking at 153 patients. These are maybe descriptive studies where the physicians just took the health records, and they found that 58 patients out of 153 participants in the study, 58 of them, 38% had diabetic emergency. Now, 77.2% or 11 patients has DKA, 19 patients or 12.4% they had hyperosmolar coma, and 18% or 28 patients. So it seems that hypoglycemia from this study, hypoglycemia is more common than DKA and hyperosmolar coma. Actually, my experience at HHS is very common in patients who comes to pilgrims, basically because most of them, they don't take their medications. So they stay days and days and days without medication. Then they present with hyperosmolar coma. Another study looking at the acute complication of diabetes among pilgrims during Hajj in 2017, 281 patients was there, and the result was there. 199 patients had foot injuries, and you can see here from this study that foot injuries consist of 70.8%, almost 71% of patients who had admissions were due to foot injuries. 72% had hyperglycemia, and 13% had hypoglycemia. So actually, different studies.
Dr. Khalid, we are running out of time, please.
Okay.
So you have 2 minutes probably.
Good enough. Okay, this is the key recommendation to people with Hajj. Maybe I will leave this for my next colleagues, but actually I would say that umbrella and drinking a lot of water is very much important for people who are doing Hajj. Now, call to action by Dr. Mahmoud and his colleagues. You have to encourage patients to do physical examination before they go to Hajj. Ensure that they don't have micro or macrovascular complication. Ensure that they get their medication, enough supply. They have good care of their feet. They should bring their own medication with them. They should avoid going out when they, let's say, in noon time, when the temperature is very, very, very high. Maybe if they're going to do Jamrat or so, they should do that at night rather than doing it in the morning. That's it. That's a quick summary. Thank you very much for listening. That's my email there. If you need any further information, please contact me. Thank you.
very much, dear speakers, Professor Sanjit and Professor Khaled Al-Tayyib, and we have some questions. And let me start with the first questions. A question from Dr. Suleiman Abu Sheikh. Does Saudi Arabia have statistics on the number and type of diabetes patients or not? I think this question is not concerned with Hajj. Dr. Khaled, do you have an answer to this question?
He's asking about statistics.
Number and type of diabetes patients in Saudi Arabia.
National numbers.
I think so, because he's not talking about Hajj.
You go to the if you go to the website of the Ministry of Health, yes, they have national numbers and registry, national registry for patients with diabetes. But those who go to for seeking treatment in the Ministry of Health itself, national numbers. We have national studies, and the last one was maybe about 6 or 8 years back. But if you want to know the number of people going to the Ministry of Health, whether primary health care or to hospitals or diabetes centers, it is there. It's on the website of the Ministry of Health.
Thank you, Dr. Khaled. Another question. When compared with diabetes who have, when compared with people who have no diabetes, any change in the prevalence of ischemic or hemorrhagic stroke compared to those with diabetes in summer or not? Is there any difference in hemorrhagic stroke or ischemic stroke between the group with diabetes and the non-diabetic persons, especially during summer?
Now, I believe that in diabetics, and you have shown this study there, compared to non-diabetics, the people with diabetes are more hospitalized, so have more hospitalization with people with diabetes, especially in the critical care units. Those who come with stroke, for instance, are outnumbered for non-diabetics. People who come with the surgical units also become more with diabetic food problems, other conditions of diabetes. Hemorrhagic strokes per se, I didn't study which has looked at hemorrhagic stroke by itself.
Dr. Khaled, just let me to comment on this subject. يعني patient during Hajj, they are more prone for dehydration, so that you may expect that they would have, they are at high risk for developing non-hemorrhagic stroke, that is either embolism or thrombotic stroke. Thank you very much.
Yes, that's true. That's true, especially because of people who are taking medication which can cause dehydration. That's SGLT2. But I said that I didn't go and I didn't see a study which has compared hemorrhagic stroke in diabetics versus non-diabetics.
Yeah.
A request from Dr. Muhammad Awais. He said there should be a consensus guidelines indicated insulin and oral agent reduction guidance chart for Hajj. He's asking to produce some guidelines about how to deal with medications during Hajj. And let me ask this question to Dr. Sanjit later on. Can we do any guideline or any recommendation to reduce the dose of medications during Hajj or not? And I think this is the remaining of the request. What do you recommend about dose reduction of oral hypoglycemic agents in advance for prophylaxis of hypoglycemia during Hajj? Dr. Khaled.
I believe our colleagues will talk about this.
Okay, we still have a lecture
Yes.
about treatment during Hajj.
Yes, they will talk about this.
دكتور نعيمة الشواهدي. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. شكرا جزيلا على اللقاء العلمي. Is there any reference guidelines for Hajj? This is again a request to do guidelines or recommendations for Hajj.
Yeah, I think,
Uh,
as I said before, if you go to the website of the Ministry of Health, there is a complete file. It's about 45 pages to tell the people of Hajjis how to care for themselves before they come to Hajj, during their Hajj, and after they go back. And it is in all languages. I've seen it maybe in 15 or 16 languages: English, French, Urdu, Filipino, Turki, Indonesian, Pakistani, or all languages. I think is there. All what we need is to guide the pilgrims to have a look at it.
can we write the link, please, Dr. Khalid, later on? Can we send the doctors the link for this site?
Yes, it is MOH, Ministry of Health.
MOH. Okay.
.sa.
Thank you very much. Dr. Tasneem, thank you very much. I want to ask about insulin storage. What is the best method? I think Dr. Najim is going to give a presentation about management during Hajj. Dr. Khalid, a figure about the diabetic Hajj every year. I think you gave enough information about this topic, Dr. Khalid. Dr. Suleiman Abu Sheikh, does Saudi Arabia have any cost data for diabetic patients? Does Saudi Arabia have statistics on the number and type of diabetic patients? I think you said the answer for this question. To adjust the doses during Hajj, wait for the coming lectures, please, dear doctors. And this is the end of the questions. Thank you very much, Dr. Sanjit and Dr. Khalid.
Thank you.
Dear colleagues, on behalf of Bahrain Diabetes Society, we are appreciate to be with you in this excellent seminar. Our presentation about diabetes and Hajj, health challenges by Dr. Misbah Kamel. Dr. Misbah is consultant internal medicine and endocrinology immediate post-president diabetes in Asian group, and founder and vice president Upper Egypt Diabetes Association, IDF member, and ex-member of Egyptian National Committee of Diabetes Endocrinology, and founder and member of Egyptian Alliance for NCD, Non-Communicable Disease, member American Endocrine Society, and speaker, chairperson, and faculty member in nearly all national, many distinguished international diabetes conference. So you are welcome, Dr. Misbah Sayyid Kamel.
Thank you very much, my dear friend, Dr. Mariam and Dr. Abdullah, the chairperson of this session. And thank you very much for our dear friend, Muhammad Sandid, the chair of MENA region, and the leader of the knowledge exchange, my dear Dr. Nadima. And I think my mission will be so easy because all of the previous colleagues elegantly talk about the health challenges in diabetes and the Hajj, and I'll go only for illustrating the most important points they said. As regarding the epidemiology, all of us know that more than 537 million individuals worldwide have the diabetes. 90% of them have type 2 diabetes, and from those, about 161 million Muslims have been estimated to be diabetic, and with high prevalence in our Muslim nations, Pakistan, Indonesia, Egypt, Bangladesh, India, and this will have double phase of epidemic of diabetes and the sincere interest in doing Hajj. And so we must have this huge number of 2.5 million, more than 2.5 million pilgrims gather annually from 5 to 15 days, and sometimes extend to 4 to 5 days for doing Hajj. And when we are faced by the pandemics, either communicable like COVID-19 or non-communicable like diabetes and its comorbidities, the matter needs more and more effort to have safe Hajj in this environment of pandemics and health comorbidities for the pilgrims. And as our friend Khalid Tayyib said, that the most problematic matter was the lack of education and awareness, either from the healthcare provider or the patient education. And we are here tonight to give some light about this patient education and healthcare provider education, so we can estimate rightly the problem and find some solutions for safe Hajj. And about 55% of the Hajj pilgrims receive educational counseling before Hajj. But this is the responsibility of these the healthcare providers and the health systems in the native land of Hajj before traveling to Hajj, to assess them and educate and counseling them about the safe Hajj. And still, we need to have some guidelines about the diabetes management of Hajj for our healthcare providers. And I think this was a request of one or more of our audience today or tonight. And poor self-management constitute about more than 90% of causes of the complications of diabetes, and engagement in regular blood glucose monitoring is less than 40%. And this is leading to the prevalence of this killer trait Hajj. The challenge for people with diabetes will be hypoglycemia, dehydration, infections, food injuries. Not only this, but also for the other extreme, hyperglycemia, DKA, and hyperosmolar states with the cardiovascular renal problems, with diabetes being exacerbated with the physical exertion, and also the environmental lack of diabetes control due to erratic diet and unstable regimen of sleep or misalignment of circadian rhythm. Also, heat stroke and heat exhaustion have been nicely appointed by Dr. Khalid Al-Tayyib, and the risk stratification, Dr. Khalid Al-Tayyib elegantly throw light about it from the American Diabetes Association, and with the group led by Muhammad Ibrahim, to follow the same stratification of fasting and diabetes. And I think this is not much relevant to Hajj. We need another stratification, and like this is a risk stratification that taking in consideration the glycemic aspect and the therapy related, and also the presence or absence of acute and chronic complications. But one aspect is very important, that majority of pilgrims or Hajj are elderly, and we must look for the self-care capacity of them. And if there is social support, if there is someone caring for them, if they can do the daily activities regularly, optimally, near optimally, or impaired or severely impaired, this parameter is very important. This was not done in fasting Ramadan, because fasting Ramadan yearly, the elderly, whatever their cognitive function or their health states, are surrounded by the family and taken care by other people. But in Hajj, if they are alone, if they have no social support, if they have poor cognition, this is against the recommendation of being Hajj. So when we are looking for glycemic related, we said if there is well-controlled diabetes with no hypos, it is low risk. He can perform, or she can perform Hajj. When especially if the oral therapy other than SGLT2 inhibitors or old sulfonylureas like glycobenzylamide or taking insulin, if the mother of therapy is warning of hypos or uncontrolled blood sugar, that must be considered when we give the recommendations. Also, when we have this patient of current hypos and hypoglycemia unawareness, or taking premixed human insulin or basal bolus with complications like chronic kidney disease or a recent stroke or unstable angina or heart failure, they are not recommended to doing Hajj. So this risk stratification take all these parameters together, so can have a full picture about the recommendation, not only those like fasting Ramadan, because Hajj is very different in the environment, in the food taken, in the overcrowdedness and so on. So I think this risk stratification is relevant than those discussed by my previous colleagues, Dr. Khalid Tayyib, when he's stating about Muhammad Ibrahim's risk stratification. And also we have beliefs of the patients about the perception of diabetes and perception of Hajj. Most of our Muslim patients give the priority to doing all the duties of Hajj, whatever the risk that can be imposed on diabetes or the general health states. And this must be discussed not only by the healthcare providers, but also by the religious leaders to give a very clear message about the risk and benefit for doing some rituals of Hajj. One of the most drastic complications of infectious diseases because of the overcrowdedness and the pandemic of COVID-19, showing that pilgrims were found to be more compliant with the preventive protocols because they want to fulfill the religious commitment first, whatever the health status, and this imposed more and more burden on the healthcare system because of the spread of the infection, especially for the comorbid, compromised immune one. And in 2022, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia opened the Hajj for all with few restrictions, and this will increase the opportunity of spread of infection, especially on these people with compromisation, either diabetes or other comorbidities. And the elderly are very vulnerable group to have elevated risk of cardiovascular complication and renal complications and food complications. Also, non-infectious or from the infectious non-communicable pandemics of Salmonella, Campylobacter E. coli are encountered during Hajj due to lack of hygiene and overcrowded mosques and camps. And the risk of contracting any of this infection must be considered, especially among older ones. And the upper respiratory tract infection is the most commonly encountered infection in this age group with increased risk of hyperglycemic complications. Hyperglycemia also can be one of the manifestations among the Hajj, and Dr. Khalid Tayyib elegantly said that he sees HHS more and more than the registered one in the statistics. This can be due to regular meal times, regular high carbohydrate load, and also the difference between the medication, because if they are on insulin and this insulin is different in their native home than in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, this must be adjusted to give neither hypo or hyperglycemia. Hypoglycemia is still being the ghost, and about 37% of diabetic patients in Hajj was identified with hypoglycemia, and either symptomatic or documented, and this sometimes perceived by Hajj that it is only from the general tiredness and not correlated with the diabetic state. And this is very important to be guarded against. Also, we said about the medication and high temperature. Then when we came to the food complications, we have very important issue because of the food ulcers and burns and blisters are frequent among the pilgrims. And so when we have the risk stratification, even recent or nearly recent, the food ulcer is a risk factor for recommendation of Hajj. And there is also significant risk of sustained food burns due to a high temperature on the ground in the summer, and this will manifest later as food ulcer, and we must guard against this by recommendations. I think our colleague, Dr. Yaqub, will talk about this in the management of diabetes during Hajj, but we must guard against these food problems, especially when there is very apparent danger. I think some of fatwas permit the Hajj to wear food socks and to take care of their foods. One of the aspects are the renal and the cardiovascular, and we have these even more commonly of uncontrolled diabetes without Hajj. And in Hajj, it increased in the prevalence, increased in severity, and producing morbidity and mortality. So we must get, it is recommended that the dosage of the diuretics must be reduced in patients with diabetes who undertake Hajj journey in order to minimize the risk of hyperglycemia, especially when we and the Hajj was put also in SGLT2 inhibitors for diabetes. And this is a risk for DKA and dehydration and coexisting cardiovascular and renal problems. And all medications must be carefully planned to rule out the risk of any effects on renal or cardiovascular, and the dosage of the medication and the types of the medication must be adjusted before going to Hajj by a healthcare provider. And during the Hajj, there must be consultation to the widely spread healthcare centers provided by Kingdom of Saudi Arabia everywhere on the holy places in Mecca and Medina. Also, blood pressure must be one of the parameters that must be properly adjusted. Misconceptions of this is the beliefs of the diabetic patient. They are not know what they have to be permitted and what we have exempted, especially in tawaf, especially in being in Mina or Muzdalifah in an proper environment. They can exempt it from sleeping there or having the nights, spending the nights there. And also we said that about the diabetic food, and he can delegate and throw papers for being not be able to throw it by himself or herself due to sickness or old age, especially in incapacitated ones. And also for tawaf al-ifada, it can be postponed till another day without rushing. In conclusion, Hajj pilgrims poses certain challenges to those persons living with diabetes. Comprehensive pilgrimage medical checkup in combination with focused health education is necessary to ensure safe pilgrimage. Appropriate attention must be paid to diet, glucose monitoring, dose titration, maintenance of fluid balance, and food hygiene. Understanding these aspects of diabetes by healthcare providers are very important. And overall, patients with diabetes need to be carefully managed before and after and during a Hajj journey in order to prevent severe hypoglycemia, hyperglycemia, food complications, cardiorenal complications, and infections. And good planning of the pre-travel consultation can having a safe Hajj. And the major objective of pre-Hajj planning is to achieve good control of diabetes and avoid any complications during the performance of Hajj. And thank you.
Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. It is my pleasure to sharing this very important session actually with my colleague Dr. Maryam Al-Hajri from Bahrain. We have already listened to Dr. Misbah about his elegant presentation, and I'm delighted to introduce Dr. Yaqub Ahmedani. Dr. Yaqub Ahmedani is the Deputy Director of Baghi University of Diabetology and Endocrinology. He's a Professor of Medicine, Baghi Medical University, Karachi, Pakistan. He's also the Chairman of Ramadan and Hajj Study Group, Pakistan, and co-chair of IDF Task Force, Fasting and Diabetes. Professor Yaqub is going to talk about the diabetes management during Hajj. So without further notice, Professor Ahmedani, the floor is yours now. You can start.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for your introduction, Abdullah. And thanks the organizers, the IDF MENA region, that they have given me this opportunity to talk about this important subject of management of diabetes during Hajj. I think after my senior colleagues, it will be a difficult job to talk after so senior colleagues. So bear with me. There will be some repetition of previous talks. So as we all know that Hajj is one of the main pillars of Islam and is mandatory for all adult Muslims who can afford the journey and are in acceptable health. It is reported that more than 2 to 3 million people from more than 184 countries performed Hajj every year. And so many pilgrims were reported to attend Hajj in 2017, including 25.5% of domestic and 74.5% of foreign pilgrims. 24 lakhs pilgrims performed Hajj in 2019 based on SAI's official website registers. Many of them are suffering from diabetic complications like eye disease or coronary artery disease or diabetic foot problems. Due to changes in usual life of people with diabetes during Hajj, geography, weather conditions, dietary changes, physical activities, they are prone to face different challenges. Increasingly, diabetes has been reported as a leading cause of morbidity and mortality during Hajj. Some people with diabetes are at high risk for morbidities during Hajj. They include people with poor glycemic control or severe and recurrent episodes of hypoglycemia and unawareness, recent ketoacidosis or hyperosmolar state, and advanced diabetic complications such as renal and cardiac disease. So patients with multiple daily insulin injections or people on sulfonylureas are also prone to have some problems. So there are high risks for pilgrims with diabetes, which include, I think this has already been covered by my previous speaker. We did this study for 2 consecutive years, a small scale study where we looked into the problems that have been faced by our pilgrims who went for Hajj in 2017 and 18. And we found that hypoglycemia was in 27% of people, and 36% of the people had hyperglycemia, and 19% of the people had foot problems. So these were the main problems in our group of patients, although this was a small scale study, so we cannot conclude anything from that, but at least it has shown that people can have problems if they are not aware of all these problems beforehand, and they should be educated before going for this important journey. So pre-travel consultation and education is important and is essential. An assessment must be made of the health status of the patient. A thorough physical examination, including the foot examination, renal and cardiovascular profile, should be done 2 to 3 months before Hajj. HbA1c must be closely monitored, and it is important to identify patients with existing micro and macrovascular complications or other comorbidities. This should be done before they're traveling. Blood glucose monitoring device, band heads, and extra batteries for the glucometers are needed. Sufficient quantity for all medications should be taken along with them. They have to take all of this in sufficient quantity. They have to take thermally insulated flasks or pool wallets for storing insulin. They should bear a band which says that they are diabetic. In case of emergencies, that can help them identifying their problems, and in case of hypoglycemia, they can be treated at the time. Sugary foods and beverages, they should be keeping some sugary food or drink that can be taken in case of emergency. For infection prevention, they should know about what are the prevention measures they have to take, and also how to prevent from dehydration and diarrhea. Sick day rules should be discussed with the patients or the pilgrims who are going for Hajj. Patients should not forget to take insulin or other diabetic medications, and the glucose levels need to be closely monitored more frequently when they are sick. In case of any kind of sickness, infection, or diarrhea, it is essential to stay hydrated, and they have to consume plenty of non-sweetened drinks and consume small, frequent meals. There are specific risks during Hajj, including upper respiratory tract infections, urinary tract infections, dysentery, diarrhea, heat stroke, dehydration, body aches, and fluctuating blood sugar levels. So, not only acquiring conception about those common problems, but also having the preliminary knowledge of management by consulting with concerned physician prior to travel is the basis to overcome such unpleasant circumstances. So education, awareness about hypoglycemia is important. All pilgrims with diabetes should be aware of symptoms and signs of hypoglycemia and how it should be treated. Their companions should also be educated about signs and symptoms of hypoglycemia. Pilgrims with diabetes should always carry treatment for hypoglycemia with them, such as glucose tablets or sweets. Education for planning meals in advance is important, and the dietary chart should be discussed with your patient. Hypoglycemia, I think this has been covered. Why they get hypoglycemia? Because of increased physical activity, because of smaller meals at times, because of unusual food intake, because of different timings of meals. Excessive heat may also enhance insulin absorption. So hypoglycemia must be treated immediately. It can be preventing by taking medications and meals regularly, and it may be important to take mid-morning snacks. Frequently monitoring of glucose is very important, and the medication doses must be altered and must be done in the pre-Hajj visit. People who are treated with insulin or sulfonylurea, they should carry a diabetes emergency kit at all times containing glucogel to rub on the pilgrim gums if they are found unconscious. To avoid hypoglycemia, patients should take medications and meals regularly and to avoid high sugar containing foods. Monitor blood glucose level and keep well hydrated. If the blood sugars are more than 17 millimoles per liter, frequently they should seek medical attention. This is particularly important to stay well hydrated. It's important for people with diabetes if their sugar level are high and when the weather is very hot. Drinking plenty of sugar-free and caffeine-free drinks and water to avoid dehydration and heat stroke. They should carry water bottles at all times. Suspected heat stroke should always be regarded as a medical emergency and the medical advice should be taken immediately. Prior to traveling, pilgrims with diabetes should ensure that they have sufficient supply of medications, including, if necessary, insulin needles, insulin pens, and glucometers. Insulin and other injectable treatments should not be put in the luggage hold of the aircraft as it may freeze and become unusable. It should be kept in hand luggage and ideally in a cool bag type container. Once in Saudi Arabia, insulin should be kept in the fridge, but not in the freezer section. While moving around the hot places, insulin should be stored in cool bags and kept away from direct sunlight. Medication adjustment during Hajj is important. People on insulin therapy, because insulin can cause hypoglycemia with excessive physical activity and change in the meal timing, and maybe the content and maybe the amount of food they are taking. The doses are to be adjusted during Hajj. So people on analogs are better than the human insulin, like if the combination of basal and rapid-acting insulin analogs have a lower risk of hypoglycemia, while short and intermediate-acting insulin to reduce the dose by 20% before and during prolonged walk. Basal insulin also need to be adjusted according to the physical activity patterns. And the combination of basal insulin with GLP-1 receptor agonist is superior in terms of hypoglycemic prevention, although this is costly and not all patients can afford. Pre-mixed insulins are preferred, especially the analog insulins. So this can be done with oral medications. Of course, they have to also, the dose of these drugs also have to be adjusted, like with sulfonylurea, because sulfonylurea can cause hypoglycemia. It has an inherent property of causing hypoglycemia. So people on sulfonylurea, they have to reduce their dose by 20 to 25% when they are anticipating excessive physical activity on that day. They have to reduce the dose. And also the other drugs, the oral drugs like metformin, it is safe because it doesn't cause much of hypoglycemia, and metformin can be used. DPP-4 inhibitors can be used. SGLT2 inhibitors, like the previous speaker have said, that it can be used, but with hot temperatures, it can cause increased thirst, it can cause dehydration. So if pilgrims can take enough fluids, they can take, but this can cause dehydration. So bear in mind that our patient, if they are on SGLT2 inhibitors, they have to be told that they have to take plenty of water. About diet during Hajj, of course, this is important. A balanced diet is important, regular healthy meals, and in between, the snacks are allowed. So mid-morning snacks or in the evening, they can take snacks. And complex carbohydrates like dates can be taken before Sa'i and before Tawaf, because the Tawaf is, you have to walk so many kilometers. So you actually require some energy, and that's why they can take some form of complex carbohydrates in the form of dates, maybe before Sa'i and Tawaf. They should avoid taking a lot of sugary drinks. Of course, for treatment of hypoglycemia, they will take some sugary fluid, but they should not take excessive amount of sugary drinks. During Hajj, the strict glycemic control is not recommended, but you have to slightly loosen your targets during Hajj because you have a lot of physical activity and your meals are not regular. So very strict diet control, especially in elderly people with comorbidities, you don't want very, very tight control. Of course, on the other hand, you don't want hyperglycemia as well. So it should be, the target should be set between the doctor and the pilgrim that what are the targets to be kept during Hajj. Foot problems, we see a lot of foot problems. Our center, we have a lot of, our specialty is foot. So we see every day so many people with foot problems. And many a times we see that people after landing from the airport directly coming to after an Umrah and after a Hajj with one of the foot problem. So people with diabetes, they are more prone to get foot infections, blisters and ulcers. And hot floor can burn, and in people with numb feet due to diabetic neuropathy, these burns may go undetected. So it's important to identify these people before going for Hajj, that those people who have neuropathy, they should be specially educated about how to take care of their feet during the journey. Patients should be educated on signs of inflammation and infection, and to avoid burns and ulcers, people with diabetes should wear comfortable shoes with good ankle support when permissible. Shoes must be of correct size and not brand new. Daily inspection of feet must be performed. People with diabetes should not walk barefoot. Added socks must be used in areas where shoes are allowed. Dry the feet with cotton towels after performing wudu. Moisturizer should be applied to avoid dryness and cracking. Seek medical advice immediately if any injury, redness, or swelling occurs. Vaccination is important before going to Hajj. Meningitis, meningococcal vaccination, yellow fever, seasonal influenza, pneumonia, and polio, and COVID, the recent addition. Preparation before travel is to practice walking for at least half an hour a day, to complete the recommended vaccination, to try to have a good control of diabetes and blood pressure, and it is applicable to learn practical management of diabetes, including hypoglycemia, sick day management, and blood pressure control prior to travel to overcome the adverse situation. Carry mask to protect from germs. Always carry a soft and comfortable shoe and socks. If use glasses, they should keep an extra pair of it. And they should keep a sanitizer to protect hand from germs. Umbrella, as mentioned by my friend, Professor Khalid, umbrella is important in hot weather. It should be used. Pilgrims with diabetes should wear identifying medical wristbands, and pilgrims should be given a letter confirming their medical history and the list of medications, ideally with generic names. Try to protect feet from damage by ground ties or other pilgrims during walking, or from being stamped on while circling the Kaaba barefoot. Use a small dose of insulin to cover hyperglycemia, and some bread or something for hypoglycemia management should be kept. Insulin can be stored in special cool wallets and should be kept away insulin and blood glucose strips from direct sunlight. Better to consume some extra carbohydrates as mentioned earlier before Tawaf and Sa'i and walking long distances. In case of irregular meals, patient can be advised to consume nuts, fruits, and dairy products. It is recommended to decrease the dose of insulin about 25%, and same can be applied to sulfonylurea drugs before and during those days of long walking. Pilgrims with barb diabetes should not visit roadside barbers for the ritual of head shaving, as there is a high risk of infection. Use new blades to minimize the risk of acquiring infection. Patients should be aware of contact details of dedicated local health facilities. Post-Hajj management, patients must be followed after a successful completion of Hajj. Patients should undergo complete clinical and biochemical evaluation, including examination of their feet. Dose adjustment of the patient after 14 days post-arrival to comply with reduced activity levels and optimal environments. Treatment of diagnosed ulcers, infection, along with rest and hydration. Although challenging to diabetic patients, by good planning and pre-travel consultation with medical team, this nice spiritual pilgrimage can pass safe without major health consequences. I thank you for your attention.
I would like to thank Dr. Misbah Kamil and Dr. Yaqub for excellent presentation. And now we will start the question which we received. The first question from Dr. Iman Jabi. She said, thank you all. Do you have any data from Saudi Authority for the previous Hajj on serious problems happen to patients with diabetes? This will help to plan protocol for better management and outcome. Maybe this is a question for Dr. Khalid Al-Tayyib. From
no, I can answer. I can answer, Mariam.
Okay, Dr. Misbah. Is there any data from
yes, during the presentation, we show some work for Al-Adasani and the colleagues in Saudi Arabia for the season of Hajj in 2017 and 2019. And see, I think the figures that more than 38% have some food problems, 13% have ulcers, and the rest have some sort of inflammatory signs like blisters or bubbles or so. And also for those with the cardiovascular and renal enzyme and the hypoglycemia, maybe 38% have hypoglycemia and hyperglycemia. So I think during the presentation, these figures were accounted, and the risk is agreed, and we must work for a protocol to minimize this risk for our Hajj patient for saving Hajj.
Thank you, Dr. Misbah. I think Dr. Khalid also give us in his slide, show us some studies done regarding this problem. Thank you very much. The second question from Suhair Jaber. She said, for Hajj, I think we need strong decision regarding those who should not go due to their very high risk situation. Hajj is a multitask journey that need a lot of efforts mentally and physically. Her question is, do we have an absolute contraindication to diabetic patients not to perform Hajj? Is there?
Yes, I think
Yes.
this is a very good question, and it's very important question, because in the risk stratification, we must not go the same way as Ramadan fasting for diabetic stratification, because the environment is very different. The drivers for Hajj very different. So if you recall what I said in one slide about the recommendation for Hajj or not performing Hajj, we have 4 categories: either to do it safely or cautiously, or postpone till health status permit, or absolute contraindication. This is regarding is not only the glycemic control, but regarding the all over health status, especially in elderly people with some comorbidities and cognitive dysfunction, and if there is social supporter or not, if they have followers or not, if they have somebody to care for them or not, if they can perform the daily life duties or not. So this is very important to look for all these risk factors, and must be counseled before going to Hajj. And we have one category that if they have hypoglycemic unawareness, if they are on basal bolus insulin or on conventional insulin causing hypoglycemia, if they have advanced cardiovascular or chronic kidney disease complications, or advanced neuropathy and food ulcers, recent or just unstable angina or heart failure, those all are not permitted to do a Hajj except when the health status permit.
Thank you, Dr. Misbah. The third question.
Can you just allow me for just a very small?
Yes, Dr. Ahmed. Dr. Yes. Dr. Khalid.
I'll also ask the colleagues to think about this. I think that maybe the International Diabetes Federation and the MENA office itself can make an advice to the Ministry of Health in different regions, Islamic countries, that why should we delay people to go to Hajj until they are in the 60s and 70s? Why don't we make an advice for the Islamic countries to allow people to come Hajj early when they are 30 or 40 or even 50, not waiting until they are 80 years old or 70 years old? I think if we can do this, it will be excellent, because we will have we can make an advice. We cannot make a recommendation.
Yes, Dr. Khalid, this is
one minute. Yeah. Last year and the year before, and during the Corona, the Ministry of Health had make some sort of
Yes.
They rules. Yes, they allowed
Yes.
only people who are less than 65
Yes.
to come to Hajj. Now this year it's open. This year is open. They allowed anybody who is willing to come. But if our office, I think if we can make a recommendation or an advice to the Islamic countries to allow people, because people come to Hajj when they are given the chance by their governments. So to allow people to come Hajj early when they are in the 40s or the 50s, rather than coming when they are 80s. I think that can definitely reduce the morbidities and mortalities of Hajj.
Yes.
Okay, can I have a comment?
Can I comment?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Munira. It's my pleasure to be with this meeting and part of this meeting. I really appreciate the Dr. Sandeep and his group to organize this event. Commenting on Dr. Khalid comment that why we don't make the recommendations. It's not a matter of recommendations. It's a matter of capacity. Can they accommodate those people during the COVID era when they prevent, not because they allow the younger age group, because the older age group, they are at high risk and they're not taking vaccines and they will develop a complication more and more. So this is one thing. The other thing is, based on other countries, especially Asian countries, they have a category of people that they are happy on their own. So if you exempt them, it means you accumulate, because of the 2 or 3 years, the Hajj was like having special category with limited number because of the event happened or because of the COVID era. What happened with the other countries in the Asia, they have a lot of the queue. Those people, they cannot perform Hajj in that year, which is 2021. It means they are delayed for 2024. So you have to go with the consequences, or who is, if they don't restrict the age, those are from the countries, not because of the Hajj or Ministry of Hajj saying we will not take less than 20 years, which is not applied, because the things with the countries, they have a percent. Based on their population, they have a percent for the Hajj. This year, I think they raised the percent because of the previous years. So nobody from Ministry of Hajj or from the Saudi Arabia saying restricted only this age group, because they don't want to take the risk. But those people, haram, yani, you cannot keep them in the queue and they cannot perform Hajj. So I think anyone is ready from their logistics or from their country, they can come and perform Hajj. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Afaf. Thank you.
Exact, yeah, Mariam, I can comment also. The exact rule of our IDF and members and the MENA, we can increase the awareness. We can educate. We can insist about previous preparation and counseling and proper education. But the age in our countries, especially in South Asia, especially even in Egypt, no, whenever the one is going older, he is want to go to Hajj, you know. So we cannot put a demarcation that for those for 60 or 65. Instead of this, we must make stratification and better assessment, education, counseling, and the proper care to enable them to do Hajj.
Thank you, Dr. Misbah. The third question, what are the precautionary measures and assistance for diabetes retinopathy patients during Hajj, especially the stoning of Jamarat? How are they managed, especially in cases of overcrowding? Maybe Dr. Yaqub.
I think Yaqub will have this question, and before Yaqub going to answer, I think we said that in fatwa there is exemption for those who cannot throw the pebbles, that the proxy can be, and someone can do it for them. And if they have no social supporter, this will be difficult for them to go on the Rashid. Yes, yes.
I think I agree with Professor Misbah that those who cannot do this, perform themselves because of their vision problems, they cannot see. So then, of course, somebody is allowed to throw that stoning of the Jamarat. Somebody else can do, but it depends upon how difficult for a person is to stone a Jamarat. So I think there is enough provision in our religion. It's for all, and everybody. There is a excuse is accepted from everybody. If it is genuine excuse, it is accepted. Allah accepts all.
Thank you very much, Doctor. The last question from Abbas Abhar. What about use of SG12 inhibitors like ampiclazone during the Hajj?
For me or for Yaqub?
Any Dr. Misbah, Dr. Yaqub.
When using the SGL2 inhibitors, this puts the patient in a category of high risk, except after better evaluation. So because of the dehydration, because of the risk of starvation for missing meals, so we can have this ketone body formation. But whenever there is better assessment and this treatment can be balanced with the other diuretics, and there is plenty of fluids, I think it can be used, because sometimes we need it not only for diabetic control, but for renal and cardiovascular problems arising there. So I think it needs individualization and better assessment for every case by case.
Okay, thank you.
There is any comment?
Yes, Dr. Rafaf.
Yeah, with the thank you. Yeah, I agree with the losing or whatever, any kind of SGL2. The thing is, I usually, like Ramadan, with the Hajj, I don't start new medication because of they have to adjust to it because of the increased urine output. So to avoid dehydration, I don't, with the special events like Ramadan, they don't start. Does not mean the one who is starting before Ramadan, he can continue without the problem. But having the new medications before like Ramadan or before Hajj, I try to avoid them as much as I can, especially this time now, a lot of patients, they're coming to the clinic with their blood sugar not controlled. So you would like to avoid any new medications unless you are forced to do so. But if they have to be on this SGL2 inhibitor, the only thing, as Dr. Misbah mentioned, is rehydration. They have, because now it will be very hot weather, so they have to drink a lot of water as any diabetic patient, but they have to take the precautions. With the euglycemia, DKA could happen with the SGL2 inhibitor, but mainly for type 1 diabetes who's using the SGL2 inhibitor rather than the type 2 diabetes. So I think it's just to tell them about the precautions, and the things is the rehydration. Diuretics, they have to be they have to take care of, or they have to cut back the doses as much as they can. But they have to review all their medications with the doctor before travel.
Thank you, Dr. Afaf. The last recommendation from Dr. Najwa Hayem in Libya to have a group for diabetes and safe Hajj, same as diabetes and pregnancy. This is maybe a recommendation for Dr. Sandid, and who will start to have a guidelines for diabetes and safe Hajj. Thank you very much. This is the last recommendation with that question. Thank you, Dr. Abdullah Al-Hamad, and thank you all.
Okay, thank you for your moderation, and I would like to thank all of you for the great effort you made for the success of the webinar. Despite the short time it took to prepare it, which did not exceed 2 weeks, special thanks to Dr. Nadima and all the members of the organizing and scientific committee. Thanks to the speakers, Dr. Khalid, Professor Akhtar, Professor Toom, Professor Musbah, the owner of the idea. Thanks to Professor Yaqub, and many thanks to the moderators, Professor Inas, Professor Hazim, Professor Abdullah, Professor Maryam, Professor Afaf and Fathiya, Professor Fathiya. I hope that I have not forgotten anyone. Thanks to all the participants, and a big thanks to Infomed, the organizer company, which donated the webinar organization for free. Thank you, Joel and Georgia. Together, we achieve our goal for the benefit of diabetes in the region. Finally, I wish all Hajjaj, especially diabetics, a safe Hajj. Now, Dr. Nadima, the last word, please.
Thank you, Dr. Muhammad. I would like, as you said, to thank all the speakers and the moderators and the attendees for this remarkable webinar. The subject is remarkable. The lectures were excellent. Some closing remarks were prepared by me and Dr. Afaf. So, Dr. Afaf, would you like to talk about some closing remarks, most important points?
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Nadima. As we now hear from the eminent speakers, it's actually excellent in this webinar. The things is with diabetes and safe Hajj. Some points I would like to highlight as a closure or a wrap-up of what we mentioned in this presentation. The most important thing is to the point that we raised is the diabetes will not prevent you from Hajj. So this is important. You can perform Hajj if you have diabetes for type 1 or type 2. However, it's required to take preventive measures to avoid any problems. We know the Hajj is a crowd, so maybe the infectious diseases will be rise. Those are problems. Dehydrations, hypo or hyperglycemia, these will and other risk factor or complications could arise. So this is the things that has to be considered during Hajj. The other thing is to the Hajj is not only when we talk about safe Hajj. We are not talking about when you are in Mecca. To have safe Hajj, it's important for you is before traveling to Mecca. So this is to take the area as the point is before performing Hajj, you have to prepare your things like medications, vaccination that you should take. What to see your doctor before going to Hajj. What are the things, because your doctor or GP, he knows your condition better than anyone else. So you prepare yourself before going there, and to have comfort clothes, you have slippers, all these things that you perform. But with diabetes, you have to take care of the things that it's important for you with the medications. During Hajj, when you arrive to Mecca, it's important to take care of your medications, special insulin. You have to put in the refrigerator. You have to, because each campaign or each hamla, they have their own doctor. So you inform them that you have diabetes, these medications that having, especially if you have any emergency, that everybody is your neighbor or your doctors know exactly what's going on with you. And the insulin to keep it in the refrigerator because it will be very hot. So, and other medications, you would like to keep it in cold temperature. The other thing is when you go to Masa or you go for Jamara, you would like to have your water. It's important to be rehydrated. The things is to have your candy or anything if or someone with type 1 diabetes is having hypoglycemia or hypoglycemia unawareness, to have a glucagon injections, and to inform the people who accompanied him how to restate the patient rather than to wait for the ambulance. Also, the ambulance or the people who were the paramedics, they are around the area, but at least you have to prepare yourself and to take care of yourself before you reach the complications. So when you feel the symptoms is there, you have your own things like candy or juice, water with you, and the glucagon injection as mentioned. The things is the after Hajj, what will happen? Because we talk about the Hajj, but what happened after the Hajj? When you go back to your country, it's better to see your doctor. to have your medication to be adjusted and to see if there is any problem coming, like, you know, ulcers sometimes, or they will develop complications like flu, or develop infections, flu or anything that you would like to see and consider it as a serious. See your doctor when you arrive back. So these are the wrap-up points, I think, is to cover all the aspects, and all my colleagues, they covered, but just to have the points in summary or take-home messages from our meeting. It is now the floor for you, Dr. Nadima.
Thank you, Dr. Afaf. Thank you for this nice summary. And to end this summary, I would like to say that Hajj is a challenge for people living with diabetes and for their doctors and doctors inside the Hajj to manage such a huge amount of people living with diabetes. God bless all the doctors who are working in Mecca, and thanks Saudi Arabia for occupying all this amount of people coming for Hajj. I would like all the speakers and the moderators to open their cameras, to be involved in the nice picture for us all. And I would like again to thank you all for this excellent webinar, and thank the organizing company for performing such a nice informative webinar. Thank you all. And thank you all the attendees for attending our webinar. Hope to see you soon. We'll have 3 to 4 webinars per year. So hope to see you all soon.
Inshallah.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for respecting time also. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye. Dr. Khalid,
Thank you, everyone.
open the camera.